Welcome, everyone. We just started our recording. This is the Washington State University Faculty Senate meeting for February 27th, 2025. I'm Tracy Klein. I am the Faculty Senate Chair, and we have a couple of different guest presentations today, as well as an expanded presentation by our Regent Representative Judy McDonald. So we will start first of all with the WSU enrollment update by Saichi Oba, the Vice Provost of Enrollment Management, Andrew Brewick, Assistant Vice Provost for Enrollment Management, and then followed by Tammy Berry, Dean of the Graduate School and Vice Provost for Graduate Education. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Faculty Senate for letting us join your meeting today. As Tracy said, my name is Saichi Oba, and she introduced Andrew as well, so I think that takes care of one of my responsibilities. We have two updates from Enrollment Management. One is on the Extraordinary Talent Committee, which Andrew will lead, and then the second is where we are with regard to fall 2025 admissions and enrollment. And I have about 6 slides, I think, on that. And I think Andrew has about 3 on the ETC. I believe the slideshow is queued up and ready to go. And with that, here we go. You see my opening slide. With that, I think we can go to the next slide, and I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Saichi. So something that is little known across our campuses is the fact that we have an alternate route for admissibility for students who bring extraordinary talent into our communities. And so I wanted to just provide both raising awareness about the fact that this exists and is available to any and all of our departments, but then also to share some retention and persistence information about the students who have been admitted through extraordinary talent. In my 3 years here at WSU, we have only had about, I think, a handful of extraordinary talent candidates come through, and they have been from the athletic department and the music department. However, as you can see on this slide, and apologies for so much text, exceptional musical ability, athletic, science, math, or artistic competition awards, or similar measures of talent can be argued and appealed to the Extraordinary Talent Committee for admission. So Rob, if you go to the next slide. Since 2012, and I don't know if that is when the Extraordinary Talent Policy and Process was designed, because again, I've only been here for 3 years, or if that is when we started gathering the data, but we've been tracking extraordinary talent applicants since 2012, and we have had 123 of them admitted through the Extraordinary Talent Committee. Of those, 45 have completed their degrees at WSU, 12 of them are still currently enrolled, and 66 have stopped out or transferred away before degree completion. Of those 66, 18 were academically recessed according to their final cumulative GPA, and 48 were left our institution on good academic standing. Overall, the academic performance for the students who have graduated was at a 3.07 cumulative GPA here at WSU, and for those who stopped out, it was a 2.77. Rob, if you'll. So the Extraordinary Talent Committee is made up of 3 members. That is the Chair of Faculty Senate, so Tracy Klein, the Chair of the Academic Affairs Committee, Deanie Gregar, and Saichi Oba, the Vice Provost of Enrollment Management. In the last 3 years, we have changed our process pretty significantly for how we review extraordinary talent applicants. When I arrived, it was all done through email, and the Extraordinary Talent Committee members simply replied yes or no to the question, should the student be admitted? I have shifted the process to include an in-person discussion of the Extraordinary Talent Committee so we can come together and review the packet of materials. It's important that you recognize that this is not simply an email that says, I would like this student to be considered for extraordinary talent. Instead, it's a fairly exhaustive dossier that includes information on the student and what talent they contribute, how they will be supported academically by the department and through other student success areas, as well as a sample plan for their schedule. And so we do receive a very robust set of documents to consider. We also, for those applicants who are either international students or English as an additional language learners, we involve the International Programs Office to assess linguistic preparation. And then we have them attend our meeting and attend the discussion. And then we make a decision as to whether or not to admit a student with extraordinary talent. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Saichi.
I'll pause here and see if there are any questions. If I can't see you raise your hand, please feel free to jump in with a question or two for Andrew and I. All right, I can't see the entire field, so nobody's telling me to stop. So if there are no questions yet, I'll jump right into the funnel update. Oh, I see John has his hand up.
John, you're on mute.
What? You can't hear me when I speak on mute? You don't have extraordinary talents. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. I'm curious if you have any information or statistics about why those students who did not complete this program were unsuccessful. And I don't even know that that's the right word, why they didn't complete the program. Do you have information about that?
It's a great question, John. The information that we have in OBIEE is pretty limited. It's something that I would like to expand, but I think atmospherically, something to know is that the NCAA has changed their rules and regulations very significantly over the last 10 years. And so I think it's highly likely, and I'm happy to do this analysis to the best of my ability and bring back the findings. But I think many of these students may have transferred away to a different athletic program. I cannot prove that, but I do know that we've seen an increase in transferring of athletes, and that is across the entire sector of higher education.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate the additional insight. And so I yield to whatever is next.
But to that point, John, I am going to begin gathering more information on our extraordinary talent students because we also don't have their demographic information. So the analysis is pretty limited right now, but I do intend to flesh it out to the best of our ability.
Thank you. I'm going back into extraordinary muteness.
And just to comment on that again, moving forward, this is going to be a yearly report to the Senate.
Thanks, Tracy. It'll likely be at this very moment in time. It'll be in the spring report. So, Rob, we'll go to the next slide. All right. So what you're looking at here is what we refer to as our funnel, our data from our admissions funnel. And just so you can orient yourself, on my far left on my screen is fall 25. All the numbers we look at are in blue. That's a really good sign. That means we're positive. We've had in the last 2 years significant increases in applications for admission to Washington State. That really began in the fall of 23 when Andrew and his
Ask your
team
mom. I don't know what they're for.
implemented the Common App, which really sort of put WSU in front of students across the country in a way that we probably had not been before. There was a slight dip last year, but we've rebounded again for this fall. We feel really good. In just short terms, we feel really good with where we are here toward the end of February, looking at fall 25. Confirmations are up 15%. That's really sort of where we begin to focus our attention now. And this particular table you're looking at is all campuses, all students. Next slide. This slide, same metrics, but it's for Washington residents. And as you can imagine, this population we pay close attention to. It's who probably the folks in Olympia really want us to pay attention to. Here too, we're up about 15% in confirmations over last year. This particular group, Washington residents, we probably had more success early on with them coming out of the pandemic by year 3 and 4 than we did with non-residents, which will be the next slide that I'll get to in just a second. But, you know, we have a lot of resources going into helping students find WSU within the state of Washington. And again, this is all campuses, but only Washington residents. And I see Gordon has his hand up.
Yeah, just quick question. Am I correct in confirmed means they've been accepted and they've accepted the acceptance?
Yeah, you can consider it exactly as you said.
Okay, thanks.
Admitted would be the fourth column, fourth line down in this chart. Confirmed means that they have accepted our admission and they've confirmed with us they plan to enroll. That's
Wonderful.
actually a
Thank
really good. That's a really good question. Let me explain something real quickly. 2 years ago, the recruitment and admissions team sort of looked at our data, and what we were seeing is when we admitted a student and then we said, hey, the next step is to confirm with us, something not unique was happening, which is we asked them to pay a confirmation deposit. And lo and behold, the students who could pay the confirmation deposit immediately tend to be from upper socioeconomic rungs of the ladder, tend to be white, affluent families. What we were not seeing were students from the underserved populations. So the team took a hard look, did some analysis, and chose to revamp how we do our confirmation. So we still ask a student to take the necessary steps, but instead of giving us money at that moment, we allow them to pay the confirmation and the orientation fee with their financial aid in the fall. This is a huge step in helping students make this process more affordable. Last year, I believe our numbers, well, we're continuing it because we're pleased with the numbers we saw. I think we increased by about 30% early in the cycle, the number of students from underserved populations that were confirming with us. And so we think that's been driving some of our increases, along with just, I think, just a more robust effort at getting students to Washington State. Let's go to the next slide. All right, again, all campuses across the system, but these are non-resident students, students not from Washington, and only domestic students. So outside of Washington State, but not outside of the country. Just jump right down to that confirmation number, almost 24%. This is a deliberate effort by enrollment management to attract and enroll a number of as many non-residents, qualified non-residents as we can find. This is the group where we lost the greatest gains during COVID, and it's taken the longest to get back to. So a lot of emphasis in this. And as I shared with the executive committee, I think a week ago, you know, not to sound so mercenary about this, but we need non-resident revenue to help offset our revenue at Washington State. We do have a really aggressive goal. It's about 20%. This early on, I don't know if we can achieve it, but at 24%, we're at least on the right track. The next 3 slides will be all about Pullman. And I don't have the rest of the campuses, but I show Pullman because it's the lion's share of our enrollment, and it is the bellwether on how we'll do. So we'll go to the next slide. Again, Pullman only, all new students. And here too, our confirmations are just at about 16%. We like where that sits. At the end of these slides, Andrew and I will talk about some things that we're doing in the spring to bolster those numbers. But applications through admits, through confirmations, all positive this entire cycle, which is, it's a real feather in the admissions and the recruitment and financial aids cap. to keep us positive the entire cycle, which began in August. Next slide. Here too, Pullman, only Washington residents, almost 17% up. All the things I said about how we attract Washington residents for the system, exactly same for Pullman. A really important group to us, and one that, you know, just being a state school, we pay a lot of attention to. Last slide, Rob. Here again, Pullman only, non-resident domestic, feel great about where we sit with these students, over 22% in confirmations. This is where this particular group, though, we'll spend a few minutes talking about. If we're going to lose students from our incoming class, this is where they will melt from. It takes a little more care and effort to get them to commit all the way to Washington State and then to ultimately go through orientation and enroll with us. You know, that's just nothing really spectacular there. They're coming from a distance and they probably have other options. So we pay a lot of attention here. We are, as Andrew calls it, in our yield system right now in spring. And if you or your colleagues have participated in any of our experience events over the last month, thank you very much for that. These are incredibly important to help us achieve our enrollment goals. What we have found, before I got here, I was told this, and in the 4 years I've been in this seat, I'm a believer. What we have found is one of our strongest yield activities is to get the person here on campus. And in spring, we have about 6 programs, I believe, tailored to the incoming students. Each one is about 1,000 guests on a Saturday, half of them students, the other half parents, relatives, family members. And it's a great opportunity for us. We show off Pullman, and that really helps us helps us confirm the students we have. I'm going to let Andrew say a few words if he'd like, and then we'll open up to questions.
Yeah, just a couple other things that we're doing in terms of the yield cycle. First, I'd say that getting students to our campuses, our physical campuses, is a tactic that is being employed at all of the physical campuses. And I think we've seen data that, you know, each of our campuses yields those students at much higher levels. The other thing that we are doing is for those students who can't make it to Experience WSU, we are hosting events during their spring breaks. So we have 2 weeks when Washington schools primarily have their spring breaks. And so any student who comes to visit during one of those weeks will earn a $500 visitation scholarship. And that's a one-time scholarship in their first term. And students who come to our Experience WSU events earn $1,000. And so we incentivize participation of those students, and the programs are tremendously compelling. And much of that is due to our faculty and staff colleagues who come out on Saturdays. So let me echo and amplify Saichi's thanks to all of you for participating. It's a huge boon for us.
Thanks, Andrew. Rob, you can stop the slideshow, and Denny?
Yes, hi. So question for me, on our campus, we have a debt of $775,000. And so the number of students that would help offset that debt is, we've been told, is 104. So that's our goal, right? 104 new students at some point. Do you have any idea of what targets of students you're trying to get to kind of mitigate the shortcomings of the finances on your campus?
Yeah, Denny, a very good question and real timely. So I have several groups that I meet with throughout the month. Yesterday was what I call the WSU System Leadership, Enrollment Management Leadership Group. We are just embarking on those goal setting and objective discussions. And partly it's because for the last few years, we have been using sort of metrics that Kirk Schultz has wanted us to use, roughly a 4% increase in new students. And as a group, we believe it's time now to start the conversation again. It's likely the new president will have some thoughts, and we'd like to be prepared for the conversation she might have with the provost. So I don't have numbers now, but what you described will go into a mix, including other things like capacity, programs, financial aid. It's a pretty complex picture that goes into helping develop your enrollment goals.
All right, thank you so much.
Heiko? Sorry if I mispronounced that.
You came off mute and then remuted.
Darn it, too fast on the mouse. Thanks for that presentation. My question centers around the low percentage of students who commit that are admitted. And do you follow up with those students to try to identify weaknesses within WSU that represent a particular key area that we're missing? And is there something there that alights to the fact that these students really aren't coming to WSU? Thank you.
I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to let Andrew also offer some thoughts here. At the end of the cycle, we analyze the entire funnel. And so what we're looking for is a percentage of those who've ultimately committed. And it's usually within a real close, we're always close every year that we look at this. And I don't think it's anything that maybe WSU lacks. I think there's a few things at work here. One, on average, students today apply to over 7 colleges every fall. So we know we are one of many. I think there are a pretty serious calculation in the minds of students as they're deciding on schools. So, our goal ultimately is to get them into confirmation and then help them become Cougs. But I don't think it's anything that we don't offer or that we're lacking. I think it's just a matter of sort of looking at who we really want, who really wants us, and then working those numbers to develop our class. So, Andrew, you probably have a much more nuanced approach to that question.
Yeah, I guess I would add, so if a student calls in to cancel their application or cancel their enrollment, we do inquire as to why they've done that. And so we have a standard set of reasons that we gather that information. However, a student can also cancel their enrollment on their own Future Coug portal. At that time, we ask the question, but we have, far fewer individuals will take that brief survey. I think another important campaign that we've launched this year is the Lost Market campaign. And so what we do is we look at our whole funnel from last cycle. So those students who did not choose to come for fall 24, and we run it through the National Student Clearinghouse, and any student who has not enrolled at any institution but had an admission offer and had confirmed WSU, we reach back out to them and offer to defer their application and their decision to see if we can't get them back for fall 25. One of the main reasons for that is because financial aid came out so late in the cycle last year that we didn't feel like students and families had the necessary time to discuss affordability. And so we are re-engaging that population to see if we can't help a certain percentage of them come back to WSU.
Thank you
Hey,
both. Yeah.
Hey, Alan, before I call on you, let me just follow up with Andrew said something about financial aid. We are starting this week to send our undergraduate offers, our graduate offers for financial aid, followed by our undergraduate offers started this week. A year ago, we did those in April. So 10 months better, 10 months later, we are where we want to be in terms of sending our financial aid. This will help our enrollment. Alan?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Congrats on getting all the numbers back in the blue. I'm wondering if there's any threat of the potential federal funding cuts, indirect cost rate cut impacting undergraduate enrollment specifically. I know we have like some training grants that support undergraduates, but that's probably a small number. I wonder if there's a greater risk of what could happen with regard to what could happen.
Yeah, I would say, and I think the shoe dropping is federal student aid funding. That's the one that concerns, I think, at the undergraduate level, not in research grants or grants that I think maybe you are referring to. I think we are looking at, would they somehow curtail our ability to provide financial aid to students, campus-based financial aid? That's, I think, where the concern is. Just anecdotally, as soon as the executive orders started coming out, we reached out to all of our students in our funnel and reemphasized our commitment to helping them financial aid, scholarships. And here was the interesting pushback we were getting, not pushback, but the response. It wasn't that. They were worried about their child being a scientist. We were hearing parents say, we are sending our child to Washington State because she wants to be a scientist. And we're concerned that your cuts from the federal government are going to impact that. So, here we are thinking, like I just explained, they're worried about financial aid. And, they're worried about something at a much higher plane, which, that is a concern, obviously. But
Thank you.
Alex?
Thank you. I wanted to say how impressed I was with this new policy of, let's call it deferred confirmation deposit that you introduced. And I was curious, is that implemented as a system-wide policy or does it differ between campuses?
Hey, Andrew? Yep.
Yeah, I can take this one, Saichi. It is implemented on all of our campuses with the exception of Tri-Cities. Tri-Cities continues to collect the $250 enrollment confirmation deposit, and the rest of us have instead created this fee that is included in the overall cost of attendance, so you can use financial aid to cover it.
Hey, Daryl, before I call on you, Tracy, I don't know how much time we were supposed to have at undergraduate enrollment.
Well, you're getting close, but people are pretty interested in what you have to say and you have good news. So let's just roll through it. Tammy, how much time do you need?
I need like 2 or 3 minutes to say what I want to say. And then,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep going, Saichi. Thank you.
Hi, Daryl.
Hey, thanks. Kudos to your positive recruitment and stuff like that. One of the concerns that students I know have in terms of going into Pullman, for example, is housing cost. And so what's going on with the WSU in terms of housing costs, not necessarily with dorms, stuff like that, but other places outside of dorms and stuff like that in terms of housing costs?
I don't know what's happening outside of the residence hall in terms of cost, but 2 pieces of information we talk about every 2 weeks, and that is where we are with new student contracts and where we are with returning student contracts. Both of those numbers make our increases look pitiful. The 2 things that I remember from the last update 2 weeks ago, new student contracts were up 40% and returning student contracts were up 60%. So I think that's really good news for housing at Pullman. But the next statement from housing is always all outside entities that offer housing in Pullman market aggressively to students to get them to sort of turn away from on-campus housing. And the comment was, it's starting again. Like, they are offering all kinds of incentives to get students back into their apartment complexes or their duplexes. But overall, I don't have a good sense, Daryl, of what housing costs outside of the campus is. I do know the cost on Pullman is actually a topic for Vice Chancellor Raimondo, to actually look at with his team. They actually have just started that conversation.
I know it's an issue with a lot of our graduate students here in Spokane, in terms of apartment costs and stuff like that. So I don't know when WSU in the future is going to start having dialogues with folks about that. Anyhow, congrats.
Thank
you. We'll have. Here we go.
Amy and then Eric.
Hi, I'm on the Spokane campus. I'm Chair of Speech and Hearing Sciences, and we definitely, hear the need to increase enrollment on our campus. I was curious to hear Dina mention a formula for how many students do we need to in the seats to be more sustainable, because the way the budget model is, that is not transparent. So That would be really helpful. And at the same time, we've been working with Global Campus on doing some options for an online program, to increase accessibility for the folks that can't come to Spokane. So looking forward to having straightforward numbers, so we know what that target is, instead of just get those numbers up. So thank you.
Yeah, Amy, I think I shared that we just started these conversations, and one of the things happened 4 years ago when I was hired. They asked the same thing: where are the targets? And I remember telling Elizabeth Chilton at the time, the robust conversations needed to get your enrollment goals articulated will take a long time. And what's on fire now is not the setting of the goals. It's how do you figure out to get out of COVID? So all of our energy went there. And right now, as we sort of look back, we realize maybe we should have started this a year ago. Hindsight's 2020. But what you discussed will go into the mix, but it cannot be the only metric we use, right? It cannot. It's got to be one of. So, Eric?
Yes, I see. First, of course, again, congratulations and well done on guiding us out of the hole that we were in. And I just want to make an observation that I think some credit is also due to Kirk Schultz for his vision and leadership in putting you in place and supporting you in all the things that you're doing. I think my question is, we know more needs to be done, and you have the forum for a moment. So what should we and our constituents, the people we represent in the faculty, be doing to help your efforts?
Well, first, thank you for the kind words, Eric. But and I've told Kirk this before. I'm the person he gets to see, so he always thanks me. But it's really people like Andrew and his team that do this every day, and faculty and staff that meet with students every day. That's how enrollment gets built. But I will echo your thought about Kirk's support. Incredibly integral to getting us sort of where we are today. So thank you for that. I'll go back to what Andrew and I talked about in terms of seeing students, talking with students, during the experience events. That's great. There are times, I think, when we probably might call on faculty to just help answer a question, send an email to a student or family trying to understand something about the program. I mean, that type of engagement, we cannot buy, right? We don't have the expertise to respond. We cannot buy. It's up to you all to do it. So that's where I would say your support and help is needed. Letting Andrew and I talk to you a couple times a year, in fact, to the whole group as well as the executive committee. I think that goes a long way too, because we get to talk to all the campuses, all the faculty across the campuses. That's something that I think is, again, we can't buy our way into that. You have to invite us and let us do that. So thank you. Andrew?
Nope, nothing to add.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your report and look forward to continued good news. Tammy, I will turn it over to you next.
Thank you, Tracy. And I think that Beth has my one page I wanted to share with everyone. And this is also posted on the Faculty Senate website. So I will say, first of all, that we have our data set up exactly opposite of SciG. So we just like to keep everybody thinking here. So we go in the opposite direction. And I did not do color coding, but I'll try to walk you through this. And I also want to mention that the process for graduate admissions, this is very early in the process. So it's on a different timeline than undergraduate admissions. So I have a lot less information about where we might land than undergraduate admissions had. But I'll start with our applications. And I'm really excited about this number. If you look at the doctorate applications, which are almost all PhD, we are up on our applications dramatically after going down for years. So we have 23% more this year than we did the same day last year. We're looking at the first or the last week of February snapshots. And we have 33% more than if you look at the average across the last 3 years. So we are definitely getting WSU out there. People know about our programs and are applying to our programs at a much better rate than we had in some of the more recent years. That's mainly about the PhD programs. We have the master's has been going down, and we still don't see a recovery on that quite yet. But I still think that this overall application snapshot is very good. Deanie, did you want to?
Yes, I do have a question. When we were talking to the provost about here on our campus about graduate education, he mentioned to us that he saw cuts coming to PhDs and eliminating PhD programs. And so I guess I'm trying to put in my mind how the growth of PhDs that you're showing here is jibing with what the provost mentioned to us about eliminating some of those programs. Thank you.
Well, it would be premature for me to talk about anything about elimination because nothing like that has been decided. I think he's just talking about some what ifs in the future. The data I just showed at the top, I was only looking at applications. So our applications have increased quite a bit, but that does not speak to admissions per se. And the next table of data is our admitted same-day snapshot. And you can see that we have been going down in admissions for years. Looking at the doctorates, which I think is what a lot of people are very interested in fall 22, this last week of February, we had admitted 207. That was down to 118 in fall 23. It slipped all the way to just 59 last fall. And we're actually up 49.2% from last fall with having admitted 88 PhD students this week, as of this week. We are definitely admitting less than we have in most recent years overall. And the last year was a kind of an anomaly, probably driven a lot by the academic student employee contract, which came out about this time last year, was finalized about this time last year, and people were waiting to see where things landed, given that big change in PhD student assistantship salaries. So we are up about almost 50%, but if you look at the 3-year average, previous 3-year average, we're down 31.3% in our admissions of PhD students. So I think that represents more of like our trend has been going down, and we may end up having more PhD students admitted this year than last year because last year was a very anomalous year, but it won't be 50% more, that's for sure. It would be a nominal amount more. We also have had a lot less master's students admitted over time. So we have dropped 40% from last year, same day, and 54.3% compared to the previous 3-year average on the same day. So we're looking at, at this point in time, 41% less graduate students being admitted. This will change in ways that are hard to predict between now and when we actually finalize admissions. With graduate programs, there's a lot of movement in March and April. And so we're obviously on the cusp of all that movement. And the last thing I wanted to show is the enrollment headcount annual fall census. You don't see, maybe pull it up a little bit, Beth. This is for 10 years or 12 years, actually. It includes the blue line is doctorates and the orange line is master's degrees. And you can just see there's been a general trend in our overall enrollments of going down in the number of graduate students we have at WSU. And that trend, has been the last 5 years or so or more has been kind of steadily going down, both in the PhD programs and the masters. The decline in that probably relates to the decline in admissions because programs are deciding to take fewer students. And one last thing is we may see an increase, that trajectory may decrease even more as we graduate our larger classes that we had in previous years if we keep replacing them with smaller cohorts. So my bottom line is I'm really happy with the applications. People know about WSU and want to come here for graduate school, and we're seeing really healthy increases in our applications. The admissions are program driven. It's very different than undergraduate. Programs have to make their own decisions about how large their cohorts are going to be, and that and we're just here to serve, helping them get those cohorts in through admissions. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Tammy. And I just put in the chat, not to cut things short, but I know we have an expanded Regent report too. So I am going to encourage people to contact you directly with follow-up questions. And thank you so much for presenting.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate your willingness. I will go ahead then and call our meeting to order at 4:11 p.m. We have approval of the minutes from February 13th, 2025. Are there any corrections? Okay, hearing none, I will move along. We'll consider those approved by consensus. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Yes, Judy McDonald.
I would like to move discussion item number 2, the faculty manual updates to Title IX. These are legal updates, so I would like to put them through as quickly as we can. And it's kind of, we updated last summer and then we have to undo our updates. So go figure.
So then we do, if you would like to do that, we do need a second to that.
Jennifer Miller.
Jennifer Miller, second. Matt, do we need a vote or?
We do.
Okay. Yep. All those in favor of the proposed change?
I'll do a poll here.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And technically, there should be discussion. Is there any discussion?
Any discussion? All right. Thank you.
Poll is launched. Yeah, we have 52 approve and 2 reject on the motion to move discussion item 2 to an action item.
All right, motion passes. Thank you for that. So we will adopt that change to the agenda. Next section we have is announcements, and we will start with legislative affairs. I'm sure there's something to report there. Steve Boland.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, it's a very busy time of year in Olympia. Thus far, there have been nearly 2,000 policy bills introduced. Something in the neighborhood of 400 will eventually make it out of the session in mid-April. So those are all being chewed on. Of course, not all of those are relevant to higher education, but many are, ranging from student financial aid to presidential searches, et cetera, et cetera. But almost certainly the most interesting and important discussions center around budget. And I'll just say again that the fiscal climate in Olympia is extremely challenging for the entire state, certainly for higher education. The deficit over the next 2 biennia, the next 4 years, is estimated to be somewhere between $6 and $20 billion, depending on who you talk to. March will be the new revenue forecast, which will clarify that a bit. But the big uncertainty is how much in the way of new taxes, new revenue will be legislated, and the proposals are really all over the map. There's almost certainly going to be budget reductions for all state agencies, including WSU. The magnitude of those reductions are just simply unknown, likely to be in the low to mid single digits, but whether that's 3, 4, 5%, we won't know for some weeks. Indeed, officially won't know until April. So it's a very fluid and dynamic situation, challenging on the budget front, and that's my short report for today. I know Judy has a lot to share with us, but I'm happy to entertain any questions that people have.
You have a question from John Roll?
Thank you, Steve. Today, I believe the governor had a press conference and released some talking points, including mandatory furloughs for the next biennium. I just want to put it on our radar that I'm not sure how that interacts with federally funded research and clinical obligations.
Well, I'll perhaps leave it to others to speak to the interactions with federal funding, but just to quickly comment on the governor's press conference today. In the interest of time, I was asked to keep this brief, and so I didn't speak to that. But he did indeed propose, and it's very important to keep in mind, this is his proposal. It's the legislature that is now working on the budget. He is trying to influence the legislature through these proposals. But today's press conference, he talked about, he reaffirmed a 3% across the board cut for higher ed, a 6% for most other state agencies. A few are spared entirely, but not many. And then on top of that, the possibility of a 1 day a month furlough for all state employees. Again, I want to emphasize this is his proposal to kind of stir the pot, as it were, to get the legislature to consider all possibilities, and the work in Olympia continues and will not become finalized until mid-April.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate all the nuances and everything. I just wanted to bring up that if you're funded on federal dollars to conduct research, it seems that's in opposition to a state mandated furlough. I know there'll be a lot more to come on that if it comes to fruition. So thank you.
No, you raise a really important question, John, and others would have to speak with how, if in fact this proposal by the governor were to be implemented, how that would affect federally funded, grant-funded employees. That's for someone else to speak to, but certainly it's a very important question. Thanks.
Thank you. I will next move on then to our Board of Regents update, which also focused quite a bit on the budget. So, Judy?
Thank you, Tracy. I learned in steering that even though I was going to talk about the listening sessions and the presidential search, that people are really interested in budget. So we will get into the budget very quickly. I have 2 courtesy slides. Our student regent, Cassandra Bogle, would like me to remind faculty that the student regent applications are open. And if you know a student you think would make a good regent, the link is in my slides, and my slides will be posted either now or after. And you can get the link. You can also contact Cassandra directly with questions. The second slide I promised I would show you is from Matt Skinner. And when we did the listening sessions last spring, we heard a lot about frustrations around how grants were processed, and Matt has worked very hard to improve that. So here's a list of all the things that have improved, and there's some pretty substantial changes. And his request is, when you comment or complain about what's happening, make sure it's current and not from before they work to revise things. I'm going to jump right into the budget now. Just to clarify how things will work, there will be unit budgets hearings for the 44 main big budget groups. They will occur in April through May, due to all the things we're seeing at the federal and state level, as well as wanting Cantwell, incoming President Cantwell, to be involved in these. The other people on the budget committee will be Chris Riley-Tillman, Daryl DeWald, Leslie Bernella, Tracy and Ken for Faculty Senate, and supported by Chris Jones and Matt Skinner. Each group will is asked to prepare a template of what their current situation is, impact of different reductions, what their carry forward might be, and what they would do if a miracle occurred and we had some new funds to hand out. That's the group that will propose the budget going forward into fiscal year 26. So we name the budget by the year it ends in. It starts and ends in July. So starting July 1st of 2025, we'll be talking about the fiscal year 26 budget. Once a budget is prepared by the budget hearing group, it will go to the Board of Regents for approval. So I just want to clarify that the regents aren't making the budget. The hearing group is setting up the budget and the regents will approve it. So they're more like Faculty Senate in that they're a shared governance unit rather than a management unit. Okay, so let's look at our budget. And I like to think of this as almost like a clock. And if we start at noon, going straight up, and we let the clock tick forward, we hit our two pieces of the pie that have the most flexibility. So when we're talking about just general operations of the university, it's these first two pieces of pie that have the most flexibility. As we move, into supper time and past, we get into federal grants, which the F&A has flexibility in it, but the portion of the grant that goes to the PI really needs to be spent on what the PI does. Our auxiliary services are things like transportation, housing and dining, that kind of thing. And then as we move around the pie, we have smaller and smaller pieces of pie, and they're generally more restricted in how we can spend them. So let's talk a little bit about where we may run into challenges. We've heard a lot about the decrease in indirect costs proposed by various groups in the federal government. And the WSU word for indirect costs is F&A. If only NIH has the cut, it would be a 5 million drop for us. If it's across the board on grants, we're looking at closer to 23 million. So that would take a big slice out of our grants and contracts slice of the pie. We do have 11 grants with stop orders. We have over 1,000 employees that are fully supported on grants and another almost 900 that are partially supported. Another challenge for us is grant funding is spent, then reimbursed. So we're a little nervous about spending grant money and then suddenly it not being there. The state appropriations, as has been mentioned a couple times already, one of the risks we see there is the governor is still, as of today, proposing a 3% cut. That's about 10 million a year for us if we get a 3% cut to our operating budget. I'm talking kind of fast, so if you want to stop and ask a question, just unmute and go for it. One of the places we're worried around tuition and fees is the Department of Education administers the Title IV funding. So our students get about $145 million in loans. We have about 35 million going to Pell eligible students. There's some other, the list is kind of long, so I just truncated it. The total is around 182 million. Now, not all of that comes into us. It's used for tuition, room and board, various things, but there is some concern that if federal funding falls, that will affect how many students choose to come. So that will affect our tuition and fees and housing and dining. I think a couple people asked sort of what's the number for us to break even on students? It's complicated because the other 2 or 3 big pieces of our pie are also potentially shifting more dramatically than we're used to. The state tuition, state appropriations and tuition is the big piece of the pie that we have some flexibility on. it gets moved out into the general fund, which we have a fair amount of flexibility in spending. There's what we call provisio funds, and the state will say, we're giving you this money to do a certain thing. And then that money we do good stuff with it, but it's less flexible. I've switched here to talking about core funds, and I'm trying to flag core funds whenever I talk about core funds versus the entire budget. So our previous slide with the big pie was the entire budget. This slide refers to just the core funds, and we're going to switch back and forth as we go through the slide deck. So let's look at some of the places we get income. This slide, probably hard to read, but it shows credit hour generation in the fall semester by different groups. College of Arts and Science does by far the most credit hours of teaching. On the other hand, we are relying on our other colleges to bring in majors that we teach the foundational material to. So there's not an easy formula to say, oh, whoever teaches the most credit hours should get all the funds because of that importance of majors as well. So it's a dilemma for the central group on how they hand out funding. I wanted to have a slide that at least gave us some sense of where our research dollars are coming from. By far, Connors is our superstar on research funding. I also wanted to point out that sometimes we are not aware of all the good stuff that's going on other campuses, such as Tri-Cities, Vancouver, and Spokane. So this is a little slide that at least is number of PIs. All my slides are coming off of, almost all, I have one that isn't, but most of my slides come out of agenda items for the Board of Regents. Tracy, do we want to stop and see if there's some questions?
So we're answering a couple in the chat.
Okay.
So I think you're doing okay. I would
Okay.
plow ahead and people put questions in the chat and we'll monitor.
Okay, and they're also very welcome to email me with questions. So looking at just our core funds. So again, this is the kind of noon to 5:30 on our first budget chart. The vast majority goes to salaries and wages. So that's really tough. 82% of our core funds goes to people. So cuts in our core funds mean either we don't hire, we don't bring in people, or we have some count on attrition and we may have to make some hard decisions. So this is always a hard slide for me. Cutting people is very difficult. I did go into, Stephanie Kane came and showed us different places to get data. So I went to data.wsu.edu and I pulled the buckets of employees by type. So this top green line is our classified staff. The blue line is administrative professionals. And you can see that's our big increase. Some of the increase has come from the fact that classified staff some of the classified staff positions have changed to AP, and I'm not sure why, but AP is by far our fastest growing segment of our employees, and classified is dropping, but it may be just a reclassification in some cases. The orange line is our graduate students. So we were growing our graduate program up until about 2016, 2017, and now we're starting to shrink back down. This is employees. So it's graduate students who are employed at WSU as opposed to total number of graduate students. The faculty bucket is divided into the bottom three lines. The blue line is our tenure track faculty who have an instructional component. The green line is our career track faculty who have some instructional component. And the brown line is other. Other includes some of our non-instructional faculty, so research only, extension faculty, but then there's other things in that bucket, like for a while coaches were in this bucket. So the brown bucket, the brown line I'm a little less sure of, but tenure track faculty has been pretty flat for the last 25 years. Career track has gone up a little bit, but our big increase is in AP. And I've asked for a breakdown of AP and I don't have it yet. When we get raises, one of the interesting things is When we go and we say, I'm going to look at the 2024 budget year, we ask for a 4% increase for everybody. When the state says 4% for classified staff, we get that money and we have to give it to classified staff. When they say 4% for faculty and AP, they don't give us the 4%. They say, we recommend 4%, but here's 2/3 of what you asked for. And that's all we're going to give you. You need to come up with the other third, which we haven't done. And so our raises for faculty and admin professionals has not been competing at the same level as our classified staff. If we look again at just state appropriations and tuition, about half that money goes directly into instruction. Some of it goes to subsidize research, and then we've got other things like keeping our buildings open and that sort of thing. This, I'm sure you can't read. The thing I want you to notice is we have a lot, by the time we get to the year 2024, we have a lot of yellow background red numbers. And I'm going to break some of this down a little more. This is grand total. So this includes funding from central, state appropriations and tuition that get handed out to each of these units. It includes grant dollars. It includes other areas of fundraising. So it's a lot of different things going on. So let's look at, let's blow a couple pieces of this up so we can see it. So this is total. So when we look at a college like Connors, it's showing a balance of 5 million. But some of that 5 million is in things like grants or endowments, which Connors can't just spend any way it wants to. They have, and we saw Connors, right? Connors was our big research bar. And so not all that money's available. We're seeing that in 2024, all our colleges are struggling. Almost all our colleges are struggling, pardon me. I'm going to look at a couple other units for us. We've got some breakdowns by college, by campus, pardon me. I want to point out that Tri-Cities and Vancouver have a different budget model than the other campuses. They charge their own tuition and pay 11% back to Central, which is different from, say, Everett, that is part of the Everett or Spokane, which are part of the central budget. And lots of discussion around, is 11% the right number? Complicated to decide. Looking at some other units, just so you have a sense, and I intend for people to go back over and look at this in more detail when they download the slides. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But we have some other units in the university that overspend compared to what they've been given, or underspend compared to what they've been allotted. These numbers in red and yellow, red numbers, yellow background, we consider them a deficit. The overspending is covered by the fact that other units haven't overspent. So the money here is all internal. Whoop, there was one, where'd my... Oh, I wanted to point out enrollment management. If you go look at enrollment management, there's this big negative $50 million tag. And what's going on with that is, remember we talked about the loan money? The student loans come in through enrollment management and then go out to the students. So depending, or maybe they go out to the students and then come in from enrollment management. Not sure which way that goes. But depending on when you take the snapshot, this number for enrollment management will be very volatile. This slide is what we call debt. So this is where the university went outside the university and said, we want to borrow money to do something good. And Leslie tells me, I've got it in green, that our bond rating is an AA3. Hopefully I got that right. And so that's good. We're still pretty well off as far as how lending agencies see us. This chart is color-coded by who kind of owns the debt and is tagged with paying it off. And I asked Chris Jones for some examples. So like Workday is one of the things we borrowed money for. The students authorized borrowing money to refit the old bookie into a rec center. And so student fees are being used to pay down that red line. The Spark is one that the academics and research is paying down. Again, since we're short on time, I'm rushing, and I'm happy to answer questions on any of this. And what I don't know, I will ask the right people. I know who knows the answers, if the answer can be known. So we talk about carry forward. Carry forward is what we call the core fund budget information that's not spent. And deficit includes where we overspent both core funds and actual revenue. For non-core funds, things that's coming from grants, from foundation, we refer to as retained earning. I can almost use the words correctly. I feel like I've learned a whole new language over the last year. If we're looking at core funds carry forward, a couple units are really struggling. College of Arts and Sciences starting to really struggle. Historically, College of Medicine has been struggling, but you'll notice that their deficits are getting better if you go back and look at the big charts. But we do have the 22 million of accrued deficits. And there is a group, a committee that includes one of the regents, Doug Pika, that's looking at the health sciences overall, and in particular the medical school, and how do we start to get ourselves into a little better situation with respect to spending versus income. Again, here's some more units and what their carry forward is. And again, welcome to go back through the slides more slowly on your own. They will be posted. One of the things Leslie talks about a lot, our CFO, is cash flow. And cash flow is complicated because it's so cyclical. We get a big input of cash in September, and then we spend it down. And then we get a big inflow in January, and then we spend it down. At any given time, we want to make sure we have 90 days of cash on hand, and that's complicated. When Leslie proposes that we need to cut our budget by a certain amount, it's around trying to keep us at that 90 days in case we have a crisis, which it kind of feels like we have a crisis right now. A perfect storm of potential hits to our revenue side. So I will stop there. There's a couple slides on what working capital is and worries about where it's going, but I want to have time for the meeting to go. And I don't know, Tracy, do we want to just have people email me questions and I'll...
Well, I think we have about maybe 3 more minutes tops, because we'll have to move into the action items and agenda, but just right now, are there any questions that people have for Judy, or do you need to probably digest this a little bit?
The other document we're going to put up on the Senate website is the draft budget from last year that has just, I don't know, it's 20 pages of details. So anybody that really wants to look at things will have that posted.
I guess I just want to say too, having Ken Roberts and I involved in the budget hearings from the Senate, representing the Senate, is a first. Judy has been involved in the budget hearings. Last year was her first time, but she was primarily there as a faculty regent representative. So we also have additional representation this year, and that will be helpful in terms of reporting back to Senate and understanding the budget a bit better. So appreciate that. Are there other questions? And Judy, I did also put in the chat, you probably couldn't see it while you were presenting, but to have you please bring back the AP breakdown, because I know that was a question that exec had and that you had as well. So when you receive that, so that we can report it back to Senate.
Okay, if we get a better breakdown on AP, I will definitely share it. But these slides have gone a lot of different places. so people in the senior administration are seeing that slide. And so I think we'll perhaps get some more attention into the breakdown of where people are.
That would be
Thank you.
helpful. Thank you. All right, I will move on very quickly to reports from the faculty exec team. I will just defer mine and draw your attention to the Faculty Senate blog, which I update every month. I just posted for February. So that'll tell you a little bit about what's been going on and what we might anticipate. Eric Sheldon, immediate past chair.
Well, I guess I'll make a comment or two in my capacity as our representative to that Athletic Budget Oversight Committee, which met on the 18th and will meet again next month on the 18th. Projections are still that the budget will balance in this coming year. If you look really closely, really closely, you'll see that there is a line item of direct support from the institution to the athletic program in the amount of about $4 million. I did ask where the $100 million deficit is being held, and was told that it is being held in investment accounts that are very conservatively invested and are generating about $4 million a year. So in the very broad sense, I think we consider the athletic department program to be roughly cost neutral at the moment, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might want to send my way or convey them to the group. Thanks.
Yes, please send them directly because Eric is in those meetings. And that was a fairly newly formed committee last year. So thank you. Ken Roberts, chair-elect.
Sorry about that. Just very quickly, we are soliciting for new committee members for chairs. I'm sorry for chairs, but for faculty senate committees. So we have space on every committee except for the library and admissions and enrollment. So encourage your colleagues to consider service to the faculty senate. Go to the website. We have all the committees listed there that have vacancies, and there's a place you can just apply to be on numerous committees and rank your preference. So please consider that and spread the word. The other is we continue to make progress with the International Affairs Work Group that's going to become a committee, and the Faculty Compensation Committee. These will be discussed at Committee on Committees here coming up shortly, and then hopefully very shortly after that introduced to Senate for discussion.
So Ken, do you anticipate that we'll be able to solicit membership for those new committees before the Senate adjourns?
Yes, that is the goal. So as soon as we have those committees set up, we will add those committees to the website and welcome applications for those.
And that's going to be important because, just as a reminder, if there are things that happen during when the Senate is not in session, the steering committee does have executive power. Those are publicly noticed meetings, but given what's going on with budget and so forth, it is possible that there may be some things that come to us that require consultation with those committees. Matt, I know that you wanted to give us a report on elections.
Yeah, very quickly, with the executive election for chair-elect, it has had 39 ballots returned. I will mention that senators should complete their ballots by March 18th, and the information about the chair-elect candidates is on the website. So, very short. We have a valid election though, because enough ballots have been returned, but I strongly encourage that if you're a senator that you vote in that process.
Thank you. We have two information items. I know we had some confusion that was expressed about one of them. So the first information item is a notice of intent to rename the College of Education effective March 1st, 2025. Deanie, I'll let you go ahead briefly, but we do have some process things to clarify if there's concern.
I don't want to go too far, but I do want to mention that when the AAC looked at this on Tuesday, that there were quite a few people that expressed concerns, especially since there were signatures missing from the document. So we didn't make, there was no point. We we didn't have anything we could do with the document. It just to come back to tell you that it's controversial and it doesn't have wide support.
And I did get an email to that effect too, and responded, just, and maybe Beth, I don't know if you or Matt just quickly want to talk about the process of this, because we do know it was controversial. It did come to Senate. And you can see in the exhibits, it's pretty clearly reflected some of the concerns that there were.
Yeah, I mean, I will just mention that it was an information item on October 31st of last year. And as an NOI, and I mean, that's what I can say. So it was already before the Senate in a previous meeting, and there was an opportunity to provide commentary as part of that agenda. So comments were, for that change, were invited from the full Senate and from the full community at that time.
Yeah, and I did receive a couple. I think the comments closed November 13th. So I think what was confusing about this is then the final signed version came back as an information item.
Yeah,
But
very
if there's
recently.
any other questions about the signature, whatever, please send them to me and I'll follow up. So we also have minor change bulletin number 5, which has an exhibit as well. No questions on that. Matt, let's go ahead and move into our action items then. First action item is undergraduate and professional major change bulletin number 6.
Any discussion?
Okay. Seeing none, let's call a vote.
Poll is launched. We have 51 approve and 0 reject.
Okay, motion passes. Next item is a proposal to discontinue the Bachelor of Science in Construction Engineering degree. This did come prior meeting. Any questions, comments? Okay, let's launch a poll.
Poll is launched. We have 49 approve and 2 reject.
Okay, motion passes. And then we moved the discussion item 2 up, so that would be our third action item now, which is a proposed Title 9 changes to the faculty manual. Questions or comments? This could come back again. Okay, let's do a vote.
Poll is launched. We have 49 approve and 1 reject.
The motion passes. Next we have a series of discussion items. They came through again, it's indicated in the bulletin which committee these have been forwarded through. So the first one's AAC undergraduate and professional major change bulletin number 7, requirements, comments, questions. These will come back. Okay, Dean, are you ready for me to move along? Okay. So our now item number 2, which was item number 3, proposed changes to section 3C7 annual review of faculty. And this would go through faculty affairs. Anyone from faculty affairs want to comment on this?
I just wanted to comment that it's not a change in policy, it's just clarifying the language that if we know someone is not coming back to WSU in the fall, there's no need to run an annual review. So it's making the language clearer edit.
Okay. Are we ready to go ahead? Okay. So the next item is graduate major change bulletin number 7. And this came through the course review process. Questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. Next item, also course review process, undergraduate and professional major change bulletin number 7. Questions or comments? Okay. Next item, UCOR renewals and changes approved by the UCOR committee. This again came through the course review process, which also has in itself some opportunity for questions or comments. Hearing none. Okay. Undergraduate major change bulletin number 8, AAC. Anybody from AAC need to comment on this? Nope. Discussion? Okay. Well, then we do have some time left, thankfully, for constituent concerns. So let's open up that part of the agenda.
Yeah. That's
Okay, John Barber.
Yes, thank you. I have my microphone on.
Good job,
Constituent,
John.
can't hear me?
Yeah.
Constituents that I'm talking to around the water cooler are concerned about the upcoming elections for faculty senate folks, and they would like more information. Curriculum vitas, vision statements, what do the candidates stand for? What do they hope to do in these new roles? Faculty senate. So
well, that information is actually on our website. Now, are you talking about the chair-elect election? Or are you talking about senator elections?
the chair elections.
All right, so
You have 2 candidates that are running.
yep, I'm gonna ask Beth to share the website screen.
We'll show you, John. They may just not be seeing it.
That's true. Yes. So this is helpful. Thank you.
So if you go to the wait, hold on, are you having difficulty sharing?
Yeah, I can't get back to my Zoom. Wait, there it is.
Got it? Otherwise I can.
Okay, found it. Sorry.
Some of us are visual.
All right.
And the other thing is that Deanie has graciously offered to assist also with the design of the website. So we will see if we can improve it if these things are.
So on the website, I'll just mention, if you go to the very left-hand side, you'll see Senate Chair-elect candidates. And clicking on that will lead you to the main page, introducing both candidates for the position. The statement of candidacy is a link right under each picture. So here's an example. And then the CV is directly underneath that link. So it could very easily be that we haven't been proactive in making sure that this information is easy to find.
Well, I appreciate knowing this, Matt, and I think there might be another problem too, and that's usability with the website. One's screen view needs to be expanded far enough to the right before the left-hand menu even appears. So it's entirely possible that people are landing on the website, not seeing the menu, and therefore not finding
And not
how
finding that
to
information.
get into it.
Is there?
I agree with you.
We
Yep.
can clear this up. This is not something that is hard to clear up. So we'll work on this website usability, findability.
So Dean, if you could since you did volunteer, I'm not picking on you, but if you could let Beth know if there's a quick suggestion in terms of just even color or font or something that we could do very quickly to fix that, understanding that we have some additional things that we will do in the future, but for this, so that we make sure people can see it, that would be super.
Okay.
And thanks for bringing that up, John.
Yeah, thank you.
I will also share that, John, I do agree that I've noticed when I do not have my Faculty Senate website on full screen, I cannot see the left-hand side either. So I got to figure out, and hopefully Deanie can give me a quick fix for that.
Well, it looks like you're using a WordPress template.
We are.
And there should be a control somewhere that allows you to control the exposure of that left-hand menu, whether it's
Make it
constantly
persistent.
on or what it now is called responsive. So it'll open up for different sizes of screen views, but most people are looking at it on a very small screen view, like 2¼ inches, their phone. So it's going to be more difficult to find that way.
What you want is persistent navigation. It's always there. You don't miss it.
Thank you. And thanks for offering help too. That's really critical. Some of the WordPress support has not been robust, having a WordPress site myself, so.
Just be glad you don't have Drupal.
Yeah. Alex, you had a concern?
Yeah, no, just to highlight, the menu is there, it just inexplicably is in the top right corner instead of on the left side when the screen is too small. So I agree with the persistence part. That's hard to track. I just had the firm belief it should be somewhere, so I tracked it. But that's my belief system, not everybody's.
Thank you. Other constituent concerns? Just a comment, and let me just make sure that the chat is being monitored. Yes. Okay. So clearly the question that John Roll asked, it was something that I also noted today, the initial comment about furloughs, and that I have not heard in the past, although I have been through it as a state employee in different states. So there is some very specific language about that in the faculty manual that I will urge everyone to read in the section that Matt posted. It is something that would have to go through the Faculty Senate process.
I do want to caution that if the state sends out mandatory protocol for furloughs, the faculty manual will not apply. If the state dictates how the furloughs will be implemented, we cannot override the state.
Okay, but let's read the manual and see where we're at. Just
Oh, yes, absolutely. But
yes,
I was informed of this today.
yes, I have been through this process, and it is a pretty new conversation for us, and it might be something we would want to devote a specific special meeting to if that is the case. John Sabine?
I just want to, I kind of wish the provost would have come and talked to us, but certain universities have been pausing PhD admissions, and I myself, I was wondering what's the position of Washington State University on that. So yeah, that's a constituent concern that I would like to bring up.
So I'll briefly comment on that, not in terms of what WSU is doing, but I will say that the provost has offered to come to Senate every week if we want him to. And this week, we did not accept the request because of the Board of Regents report and the timing, but he's been willing. And so if that's something that we want to do, I will let him know after this meeting that we want some specific focus on PhD or graduate programs generally, because I'm hearing both.
Yes.
Tracy, can I just address that for just a moment?
Mm-hmm.
Just very quickly, I have heard of this as well, and there's a lot of information floating around that's made its way to us too. And there is no program at WSU who has been told to freeze their admissions or that is doing it on their own, to my knowledge. Again, admissions is a program level thing. And so, but I will tell you, I have a graduate education council. That's our advisory council to me and my leadership team. There's a link to who all is on that on the graduate school website. It is made up of the vice chancellors and associate deans of research and graduate education. So people who are in the know. We just had a meeting in early February and we talked about this very issue, and they were unaware of anybody freezing or not admitting graduate students if they were planning to and had applications open. We meet again Monday, and that's actually on my agenda to check on that again, because things change. You know, a month later, something might be different, but it has not been communicated to the graduate school, and nor has anyone from Central, like myself or the provost, been told to do that.
I think the concern though is that we're still hearing that messaging, right?
Yeah.
And
I
it
understand. I
is
understand.
coming up in faculty conversations and emails that we're getting. So I think it would be good to just address that head on. Other constituent concerns? Yeah, Deanie.
I'd like to commend Steve Bolins and the work he's been doing. 2,000 bills he's been tracking and reporting to us and doing it very quickly. I imagine this is keeping him up at night, especially the bad news. So thank you, Steve, for what you're doing. And I read your messages with great interest at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep, which is often.
Thank you.
Cliffhanger.
Well, I'm happy to serve. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, we are at time. So thank you, everyone. And I'm glad we got through a fairly vigorous agenda, but more to come. And I will reach out to the provost as well regarding some of the concerns that you've expressed. So thank you.